Make sure to like this video and hit that subscribe button right now to see much more content just like this.
The first thing Clara Hayes heard was the horses screaming, not the sirens, not the shouting ranch hands, not the crack of burning timber splitting apart in the dark. The horses, their terror carried across the North Texas pasture long before Clara reached the top of the ridge, sharp enough to make the buckskin mare beneath her throw her head and fight the reins. Then Clara saw the smoke. A black column was rising behind the cottonwoods south of Fort Worth, swallowing the pale edge of dawn and rolling low across the fields. Red River Stables was burning. Clara's stomach dropped. There were 32 horses inside that barn, and King's Ransom was in the last stall on the north aisle. She dug her heels into the mare. Go! The horse surged forward. By the time Clara reached the main yard, men were already running between the buildings, carrying buckets that were useless against a fire that large. Flames had climbed halfway through the cedar shingled roof. Sparks blew across the courtyard like orange snow. Someone grabbed Clara's rein. Don't go in there. She ripped the leather free. How many are out? I don't know. How many? Maybe 12. Clara looked toward the barn. Another horse screamed. That was enough. She swung out of the saddle before her mare had completely stopped, grabbed a heavy canvas turnout sheet from a wash rack and dragged it through a stock trough until water poured from the fabric. One of the ranch hands caught her arm. Clara, the roof's going. She looked at him. Then open the south pasture gate. What? Open it. Every horse I get out needs somewhere to run. Clara, open the damn gate. He let go. Clara wrapped the soaked canvas around her shoulders, pulled her bandana over her mouth, and ran directly into the burning barn. Heat struck her like an open furnace. She dropped low. Smoke filled the upper half of the aisle so completely that the ceiling had disappeared. Timbers cracked overhead. A stall door shook violently to her left. Clara crawled toward it, reached through the smoke, and found the latch by touch. The metal burned through her glove. She jerked her hand away. The horse inside slammed its shoulder against the wall. Easy, easy. Clara wrapped the wet edge of the canvas around her hand and forced the latch open. A gray mare exploded into the aisle. Clara slapped her hindquarters. Go! The mare disappeared toward the glow of the open doors. Clara moved to the next stall, then the next. She had no idea how long she had been inside. 30 seconds, 3 minutes. Time had become meaningless. Her lungs burned, her eyes streamed. She could hear men outside screaming for her to come back. Then part of the ceiling collapsed behind her. The impact shook the floor. Clara turned. The path she had used to enter was half blocked by burning timber. She could have left then. She should have left then. Instead, she looked toward the far end of the aisle. One stall remained closed. King's Ransom, the black stallion, was worth more than most of the houses in Oak Ridge combined. But that was not why Clara moved toward him. She had been there when he arrived as an untouchable 2-year-old. She had been the first person he allowed to brush his neck, the first person he followed without a fight, the first person who taught him that a human hand did not always mean pain. And now he was throwing 1,200 pounds of terrified muscle against the iron-fronted stall. Clara crouched beneath the smoke. Ransom. The stallion reared. His front hooves crashed against the gate. Ransom. Another beam cracked overhead. Clara stepped closer. Anyone watching would have called her insane. She did not raise her voice. Easy, boy. The stallion's ears flicked. There, a fraction of recognition. Clara kept talking. That's it. Hear me. The horse dropped back onto all 4 feet. His sides heaved. Clara reached the latch. It was almost too hot to touch. She forced it open. The stallion lunged forward. Clara stepped aside, caught the halter, and pulled the wet canvas over his eyes. He fought her. For 3 terrifying seconds, King's Ransom became pure panic. Clara held on. Come on. A burning rafter crashed into the stall behind them. The stallion jumped. Clara nearly lost her footing. Move. This time he did. They ran. Clara could not see the doorway through the smoke, but she could feel the cooler air. 10 feet. 5. Then daylight. King's Ransom burst from the barn with Clara hanging onto his halter. They reached the grass just as the center of the roof collapsed. A wall of sparks rose behind them. The crowd screamed. Clara dropped to her knees. King's Ransom spun once, trembling, then lowered his head toward her, as if making sure she was still there. Clara pulled the canvas away from his eyes. You're okay. Her voice barely came out. You're okay. She was not. Her gloves had burned through at the fingertips. Her forearms were red. A strip of hair near her temple had singed. Every breath hurt. But King's Ransom was alive. So were 23 other horses scattered across the south pasture. Fire engines finally came roaring down County Road 412. Clara sat in the grass holding the stallion's lead while volunteer firefighters rushed past her. For one brief moment, she believed the worst was over. Then Clayton Vance arrived. His black pickup slid through the open gate and stopped hard on the gravel. Clayton stepped out, wearing clean jeans, polished boots, and a white shirt untouched by smoke. At 36, he had the practiced appearance of a man who had spent his entire life knowing people would move when he told them to. Red River Stables had belonged to the Vance family for nearly 80 years. The local library carried their name. So did a wing of the high school. Clayton's aging father, Arthur Vance, still legally owned most of the property, but after a stroke the previous winter, he had given Clayton day-to-day control of the operation. Most people in Oak Ridge had begun treating Clayton as if he already owned the valley. He walked through the chaos without asking how many horses had survived. He did not ask whether Clara needed an ambulance. He barely looked at the burning barn. Instead, he looked directly at Clara's blue Ford F-150. Clara noticed. Something cold moved through her despite the heat. Clayton crossed the yard. Clayton? He ignored her. 2 sheriff's deputies had arrived ahead of the county fire marshal. Clayton waved them over. You need to see something. Clara struggled to stand. What are you doing? Clayton reached into the bed of her truck. He moved an old saddle pad, then a tool bag. Then he pulled out a dented red metal canister, a 5-gallon container. Fuel dripped from the side. Clara stared at it. For a moment, she did not understand what she was seeing. Then she did. No. Clayton carried the canister toward the deputies. This was in her truck. Clara took 1 step forward. No, it wasn't. One deputy raised his hand. Ma'am, stay where you are. That is not mine. Clayton looked at her. His expression was perfect. Confusion first. Then betrayal. You really want to do this now? Clara stared at him. What are you talking about? Clayton turned toward the deputies. We had an argument yesterday about money. That is a lie. She demanded a raise and a larger cut from the training contracts. I asked about bonuses you owed 3 employees. You threatened me. Clara's jaw tightened. I never threatened you. Clayton looked at the burning barn, then back at the deputy. She said if this family kept treating people like dirt, someday there wouldn't be anything left of Red River to fight over. Clara remembered saying something similar. Not a threat. A warning during an argument about unpaid wages. Clayton had changed only a few words. Just enough. People had begun gathering around them now. Firefighters, ranch hands, neighbors. The deputy sniffed the canister. Smells like accelerant. Clara looked from him to Clayton. You put that there. Clayton's face hardened. Excuse me? You put it in my truck. Several people exchanged looks. Clayton shook his head slowly. You ran into a burning barn, Clara. I was saving your horses, or trying to make yourself look like a hero. The words hit harder than Clara expected. She looked at King's Ransom. The horse was still trembling beside her. Her hands were blistered from pulling him through fire. Ask anyone here where I was. We will. Check the cameras. Clayton paused, only for a second, but Clara saw it. The electrical system went down during the fire, he said. Then check before it went down. One deputy stepped closer to her. Ma'am, I need you to turn around. Clara stared at him. You're joking. We've got a suspicious fire, an accelerant container in your vehicle, and a witness claiming you made a threat. A witness? Clayton lifted his chin. I heard her. Clara looked around. Most of the ranch hands avoided her eyes. Then she saw Eli Mercer, 19 years old, thin, dusty work shirt, standing behind a hay trailer, and terrified. Their eyes met. Eli's face drained of color. Clara knew immediately. He knew something. The deputy reached for her arm. Clara did not resist. Turn around. She slowly turned. The handcuffs closed around her burned wrists. Pain flashed up both arms. Someone in the crowd whispered. Another person cursed under his breath. King's Ransom stepped forward abruptly. The deputy flinched. Clara looked over her shoulder. Easy, Ransom. The horse stopped, even with her hands cuffed behind her, even while two deputies led her toward a patrol car. The stallion listened. Clara looked once more at Eli. He lowered his eyes. The cruiser door closed. Through the glass, Clara watched Clayton walk toward King's Ransom. The stallion pinned his ears. Clayton stopped. For the first time that morning, Clara saw fear on Clayton Vance's face. Eli saw it too, because Eli knew exactly what had happened. An hour before Clara arrived, he had been inside the tack room repairing a broken breast collar. He had heard footsteps in the hay bay. Through a gap in the boards, he saw Clayton carrying 2 red fuel containers. Eli had watched him pour accelerant along the dry wall. He had watched Clayton strike a long match and watched flame race across the floor. Eli froze. Then Clayton noticed him. For 3 terrible seconds, they stared at each other. Eli ran. Clayton caught him behind the feed shed. He slammed Eli against the corrugated wall hard enough to knock the breath out of him. You saw nothing. Eli tried to pull away. Clayton grabbed his shirt. My dad, your father lives on my land. Clayton's voice was almost calm. That house belongs to Red River. That tractor belongs to Red River. Every acre he farms belongs to my family. Eli's breathing became shallow. Clayton leaned closer. You say one word and he is gone before dark. You started the fire. Clayton's fingers tightened. You say that again, and I'll tell the sheriff you helped me. Eli stared at him. Clayton smiled. You're 19. poor. Your father owes this ranch money. Who do you think they'll believe?" Then Clayton walked away. Eli remained hidden behind the shed. A minute later, he saw something else. Clayton crossed the yard carrying the second fuel container. He looked around, then slid it beneath the saddle blanket in Clara Hayes' truck. When the patrol car carried Clara away, Eli said nothing, and for the next several weeks, that silence began to eat him alive. The story spread through Oak Ridge before the barn stopped smoking. By noon, people were talking about the black trainer who had burned Red River stables over a wage dispute. By evening, the local news had footage of Clara being led away in handcuffs. The image played again and again. Soot across her face, burned clothes, hands cuffed behind her. What the short clip did not show was the horse she had saved standing 10 feet away. Clara spent 2 nights in county custody. Her attorney, a public defender overwhelmed with cases, eventually secured bond. Clara used nearly all her savings. Her 2-acre homestead went up as collateral. When she returned home, 3 horse trailers were waiting at the gate. A longtime client stepped out. Clara knew him. They had worked together for 6 years. "Morning, Tom." He could barely look at her. "I'm taking Blue?" Clara nodded slowly. "Trial hasn't happened yet." "I know." "You think I did it?" Tom rubbed the back of his neck. "My wife's uncomfortable. I asked you." He looked at her then. "I don't know what to think." Clara stared at him for several seconds, then opened the gate. By the end of the day, 5 more horses were gone. Within a week, nearly all of them. The feed store stopped extending her credit. A restaurant owner who had known her for 9 years asked her to use the side entrance because customers were complaining. Someone spray-painted arsonist across the wooden fence near her driveway. Clara cleaned it off before sunrise. The next morning, someone painted it again. She cleaned it again. On the 3rd morning, she left it, not because she surrendered, because she was tired of letting strangers decide what work she would do before breakfast. Every day at 5, Clara went to the round pen and worked the 2 old rescue horses she owned herself. Her hands remained bandaged. The skin underneath cracked whenever she closed her fingers. She trained anyway. One afternoon, she returned from town and found an empty trailer pulling away from her property. It belonged to the last paying client she had. Clara stood beside the gate until the dust disappeared. Then she entered the small barn. There were 10 stalls. 8 were empty. The silence was different from ordinary quiet. It felt abandoned. Clara walked to a nail beside the office door. A worn leather halter hung there. It belonged to the first horse anyone had ever paid her to train after she moved to Oak Ridge. A violent sorrel gelding everyone else had given up on. Clara had worked with him for 11 months. The owner eventually sold him for nearly $40,000. That horse had built her reputation. The halter was all she had kept. Clara took it down. She sat on an overturned bucket. For weeks, she had refused to cry where anyone could see her. Now there was nobody watching. Her shoulders dropped. She pressed the leather against her forehead. And finally, Clara Hayes broke. Not loudly. No screaming. No dramatic collapse. Just tears falling onto cracked leather in an empty barn. She had spent 10 years building a life. Clayton Vance had nearly destroyed it with 1 container of fuel and 1 lie. For several minutes, Clara allowed herself to feel every piece of it. The humiliation, the anger, the fear, the exhaustion. Then she heard a horse outside. Her old mare was standing at the stall door. Clara wiped her face. "You hungry?" The mare nudged her shoulder. Clara almost laughed. "Of course you are." She stood. The pain remained. But so did she. 3 miles away, Clayton was learning that burning a barn was much easier than controlling what happened afterward. The insurance claim exceeded $4 million when the destroyed building, equipment, tack, lost breeding material, and insured livestock were included. Clayton had expected the company to inspect the ashes, confirm the arrest, and begin issuing payments. Instead, they sent Martin Miller. Miller was 58, quiet, thin, and deeply irritating to anyone with something to hide. He had spent 26 years investigating agricultural and commercial fire claims. He did not care who donated money to the local football program. He did not care that Clayton Vance had drinks with county commissioners. He cared about burn patterns, electrical diagrams, fuel residue, financial records, and time. On his 3rd day at the property, Clayton found Miller kneeling in ash where the north wall had been. "What are you looking for?" Miller did not look up. "The origin. The sheriff already has the arsonist. The sheriff has a suspect. Same difference." Miller brushed ash from a piece of timber. "No." Clayton's expression tightened. "There was fuel in her truck." "I heard. She threatened me." "I heard that too." Miller stood. "Doesn't tell me where the fire started." Clayton forced a laugh. "You insurance guys always this friendly?" "Only when people ask me to pay them $4 million. Miller walked away. Clayton watched him longer than he should have. That night, Clayton opened a bottle of bourbon in his office. His phone rang twice. He ignored it. The 3rd time, he answered. "What?" A man on the other end spoke for less than 10 seconds. Clayton closed his eyes. "I told you I need another month." Pause. "No." Another pause. "You'll get your money." He ended the call. The truth was uglier than anyone in Oak Ridge knew. Red River Stables looked wealthy from the road. The white fences were fresh, the trucks were new. Clayton's boots were custom-made. But underneath it, the operation was drowning. For 3 years, Clayton had lost heavily at private poker games in Dallas. Then he borrowed to cover the losses, then borrowed against land to cover the loans, then delayed taxes, then forged his father's signature on 2 refinancing documents after Arthur Vance's stroke. The fire was supposed to solve everything. Insurance money would cover the most urgent debt. Then Clayton could sell a riverfront section of the ranch to a housing developer. By the time anyone understood how bad the books were, Clayton planned to be gone. There was only one problem: King's ransom. The stallion had survived. Physically, he had escaped with minor burns and smoke irritation. Mentally, he was transformed. Before the fire, King's ransom had been difficult but manageable. Afterward, he became dangerous. He attacked stall walls, refused feed whenever unfamiliar people approached, reared at halters, struck at handlers, and reacted violently to the smell of smoke, leather oil, or diesel exhaust. 3 days after the fire, a veterinarian tried to examine him. The stallion kicked a gate so hard the hinge bent. The veterinarian refused to continue without sedation and safer restraint. That created a problem for the insurance claim. The insurer did not owe Clayton $3 million simply because King's ransom was upset, but the horse was one of the ranch's largest insured assets, and the company needed a documented post-fire examination and valuation before it would close the livestock portion of the loss. Miller placed the disputed portion of the claim on hold. No final valuation, no final settlement, no money. Clayton tried another veterinarian, then a professional handler, then another. King's Ransom sent one man to urgent care with a broken wrist. Clayton became desperate. Eli watched all of it. He also watched Miller. That frightened him almost as much as Clayton did, because Miller kept finding things. One afternoon, Eli carried feed past the destroyed barn and saw Miller marking the ground with small yellow flags. Eli stopped. "What's that?" Miller looked up. "Different burn depths." Eli swallowed. "Means something?" "Everything means something." Miller studied him. "You worked here the night it happened?" Eli's throat tightened. "Yeah." "See anything unusual?" "No, sir." Miller waited. Eli looked at the ground. "No." "All right." Miller returned to his work. Eli walked away. His legs shook all the way to the feed shed. At home that evening, his father sat coughing beside the kitchen window. Walter Mercer was 63 but looked older. 40 years of field work had bent his shoulders and roughened his hands. The Mercer family had farmed 40 acres along Red River property for 3 generations. They did not own the land. At least, that was what Walter believed. The Vance family had always told them they were tenants. Walter considered himself lucky. "They've been good to us," he told Eli that evening. Eli stared at his plate. "Who?" "The Vances." Eli almost laughed. Instead, he asked, "Why?" Walter shrugged. "Could have thrown us off years ago." Eli pushed food around with his fork. His father looked at him. "Something wrong?" "No." "You ain't sleeping." "I'm fine." "You look like hell." Eli stood. "I said I'm fine." Walter watched him leave the room. Eli closed his bedroom door, then sat on the floor against it. He could hear Clara's voice in his memory. He could see her being handcuffed. He could see Clayton putting the container in her truck. And every night, the silence got heavier. Meanwhile, Clara's criminal case moved slowly. The prosecutor had not indicted her yet. That was the first good sign. The evidence looked powerful from a distance, but weakened under scrutiny. The accelerant container had been found in her truck. But Clara's fingerprints were not clearly recovered from it. Clayton claimed she had threatened him, but no other employee remembered hearing an explicit threat. A security camera near the equipment building had failed 12 minutes before the fire. Clayton said the outage was electrical. Miller discovered the camera had been disconnected manually. Clara's attorney told her this during a meeting. That helps. How much? Enough that they haven't taken this to a grand jury yet. Clara folded her arms. And Clayton? Still their primary complaining witness. He started the fire. I believe you. I don't need you to believe me. Her attorney looked at her. I need them to prove it. I know. Clara looked through the office window. What about Eli? Who? Stable hand, 19. Ely Mercer. What about him? Clara hesitated. He knows something. Did he tell you? No. Then we can't use it. Clara nodded. She knew. 4 days later. Eli came to her property. Clara was working a nervous rescue colt when she heard the old Chevrolet. She recognized it immediately. She did not walk toward him, did not wave, did not make it easy. Eli parked outside the fence. He sat in the truck for nearly 5 minutes. Finally, he stepped out. Clara kept working. The colt circled. Her, too fast, head high, eyes wide. Easy. She softened the rope. The colt slowed. Only then did Clara look toward Eli. He stood at the fence. She walked over. Neither spoke. Eli stared at his boots. "I'm sorry." Clara said nothing. "I should have." His voice broke. Clara waited. "I saw him." Her expression did not change, but something inside her did. "Saw who?" "Clayton." Eli swallowed. "He started him." Silence. Clara's fingers tightened around the lead rope. "Tell me." "I was in the tack room, and Eli did. The fuel, the match, the threat, the container placed in Clara's truck, everything. When he finished, Clara remained completely still. "You watched him put it in my truck?" "Yes." "And you watched them arrest me?" Eli's eyes filled. "Yes." Clara looked away. For the first time since he arrived, anger showed on her face. Not wild anger, something quieter, more dangerous. "My hands were burned." "I know." "They cuffed me over the burns." "I know." "I lost every client I had." Eli wiped his face. "I know." Clara stepped closer. "No, you don't." He lowered his head. "No, ma'am." For several seconds, Clara wanted to unload everything onto him. Every hateful look, every dollar gone. Every morning she woke afraid she would lose her home. Every night she imagined prison. But she looked at Eli and saw something else. A frightened 19-year-old, carrying his father's survival on his shoulders. Fear did not excuse what he had done. But Clara understood fear. She leaned against the fence. "Why now?" "I can't sleep." "That's not enough." Eli looked at her. "I keep seeing you go into that barn." Clara said nothing. "You could have died saving his horse. Then he put you in handcuffs, and I stood there." Eli's mouth trembled. "My dad thinks the Vances are the only reason we've got a roof. Clayton said he'd take everything. He might try. I don't know what to do." Clara stared across the pasture. "Fear is powerful, Eli." He waited. "It'll convince you that silence is safety." The wind moved through the grass. "But silence has a price." Eli nodded faintly. Clara continued. "Every day you carry a lie, it gets heavier. At first you think you're carrying it. Then one morning you realize it's carrying you wherever it wants." "I'm scared." "You should be." He looked surprised. Clara turned toward him. "Courage isn't pretending there's nothing to lose." She touched the bandage still wrapped around her palm. "Courage is knowing exactly what you might lose, and deciding there's something you refuse to lose with it." Eli whispered. "What?" "Yourself." His eyes filled again. Clara looked at him for a long moment. Then she opened the gate. Eli looked confused. "You're not going to tell me to go to the sheriff?" "No." "Why?" "Because if I make the decision for you, you'll spend the rest of your life saying you only did it because I pushed you." She stepped aside. "You decide who you are." Eli slowly walked back toward his truck. Before he climbed in, Clara called his name. He turned. "If you choose the truth, don't tell it halfway." Eli nodded, then drove away. Clara watched until he disappeared. Only after he was gone did she pull out her phone. She called her attorney. "I have a witness." "What did he say?" "Everything." "Will he testify?" Clara looked toward the road. "I don't know." That night, Eli packed a bag. Not because he planned to leave, because he knew Clayton might force him to. He placed the bag beneath his bed. The next morning, he went to work. Clayton was standing beside the temporary stalls. "You been somewhere?" Eli froze. "No." Clayton studied him. "You sure?" "Yes." Clayton stepped closer. "You look nervous." I'm tired. Get some sleep. Clayton smiled. Wouldn't want you making mistakes. He walked away. Eli remained still. He realized Clayton knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. 2 days later, a letter arrived at the Mercer house. Walter opened it at the kitchen table. Eli watched his father's face change. What is it? Walter read the page again. Notice of termination. Eli's stomach dropped. What? Says our tenancy ends in 30 days. Walter looked stunned. 30 days? Eli grabbed the paper. Clayton's signature was at the bottom. His father stood. There's got to be some mistake. Eli stared at the name. No. What? It's not a mistake. Walter looked at his son. Eli closed his eyes. He could not lie anymore. Dad, I need to tell you something. An hour later, Walter Mercer knew everything. When Eli finished, the old man did not speak. He sat with both hands on the table. Eli waited. Finally, Walter said, "You watched that woman get arrested?" Eli's face burned. Yes. Knowing? Yes. Walter closed his eyes. I was scared for you. I know. I thought he'd throw us out. And now he is anyway. Eli looked at the eviction notice. I'm sorry. Walter pushed his chair back. For one frightening second, Eli thought his father might strike him. Instead, Walter walked to the window. You know why your grandfather stayed on this land? Eli shook his head. He used to tell me the Vances gave him a chance. Walter laughed bitterly. Maybe that's what I wanted to believe. He looked at his son. A house ain't worth much if you got to become a coward to keep it. Eli stared at him. Walter nodded toward the door. You know what you need to do? Eli swallowed. I do. Then do it. The following afternoon, Eli went looking for Miller. He found the investigator near the ruins. I need to talk to you. Miller looked up. Eli's hands shook. Privately. Miller studied him, then closed his notebook. They walked to Miller's truck. Eli told the story, not halfway, everything. When he finished, Miller asked only one question. Will you put that in a sworn statement? Eli looked toward the Mercer house in the distance. Yes. Miller opened the passenger door. Get in. But Clayton had already set the next part of his plan in motion. With creditors circling and insurance payments frozen, he announced a large public auction and property showcase. He invited breeders, investors, county officials, news crews, veterinarians, insurance representatives. Clayton told people the event would prove Red River Stables remained strong despite the criminal attack. Privately, he needed money, fast. He planned to sell 12 horses and several pieces of equipment. He also planned to present King's ransom for veterinary evaluation. If the stallion could be examined and his post-fire condition documented, one major obstacle in the insurance adjustment would disappear. Miller knew about the auction. So did the sheriff, and by then, so did the Texas Fire Marshal's office. Eli's sworn statement had changed the investigation overnight. But Miller did not want Clayton warned too early. Neither did the sheriff. They wanted records, phones, financial documents. They wanted the entire case. Eli agreed to keep working. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. Clara knew only that Eli had spoken to investigators. Her attorney told her not to approach Red River. You're still technically under investigation. Technically? The prosecutor hasn't dismissed anything. So Clayton gets to run an auction while I'm still branded an arsonist. For now. Clara hated those words. For now. Her entire life had been reduced to, for now. Then, the morning of the auction, Clara received a call. It was Miller. "Miss Hayes?" "Yes." "You still have a relationship with King's Ransom?" Clara nearly laughed. "A relationship? Can you handle him?" "Why?" "He needs to be examined today." "You have handlers." "Had." Clara heard something behind him, metal crashing, then shouting. "What happened?" "The horse is getting worse." Clara stood. "You asking me to come?" "I'm telling you that if you choose to come, law enforcement will not remove you." She understood immediately. Something had changed. "Has my case been dropped?" "Not yet." "Then why would I help them?" Miller was quiet. "Because the horse didn't frame you." Clara closed her eyes. Damn him. He knew exactly where to put the knife. "What time?" "Now." The auction grounds were packed when Clara arrived. More than 200 people had crowded around the outdoor arena. Horse trailers lined both sides of the gravel road. Luxury pickups gleamed beneath the Texas sun. A local television crew had set up near the bleachers. Clayton stood in the center of it, all wearing a tailored Western jacket and white Stetson. He smiled, shook hands, talked about resilience, talked about rebuilding, talked about tragedy. Then King's Ransom screamed from the holding pen. Every head turned. The stallion struck the iron gate. A handler jumped backward. Another man cursed. Clayton's smile disappeared. Miller stood beside a state veterinarian. "Can you examine him?" "Not like that. We need documentation. I'm not getting killed for paperwork." Clayton stormed toward the pen. "Get a halter on him." The handler shook his head. "You do it." Clayton stared. "What?" "You heard me." People nearby began watching. Clayton lowered his voice. "I'm paying you." "You ain't paying me enough to get crushed." King's Ransom struck the gate again. Clayton looked toward the buyers. Whispers had begun. He could feel control slipping away. He grabbed a long leather stock whip from the fence. Miller stepped forward. "Don't." Clayton glared at him. "It's my horse." And beating a traumatized animal in front of an insurance investigator would be a very interesting choice. Clayton ignored him. He opened the gate. The stallion reared. Clayton snapped the whip against the dirt. King's Ransom exploded. His front hooves cut through the air inches from Clayton's head. Clayton fell, backward. The crowd gasped. The stallion lunged. Clayton scrambled beneath the gate and escaped. Laughter rippled through part of the crowd before dying quickly. Clayton rose, humiliated. Then someone near the entrance said, "Oh, hell." A blue Ford F-150 had stopped beside the outer fence. Clara Hayes stepped out. The crowd changed instantly. People whispered, some stood, others pointed. Clara wore dark jeans, work boots, and a faded blue shirt. No dramatic outfit, no lawyer, no entourage. Her hands still carried faint pink scars from the burns. Clayton saw her. His face changed. "What is she doing here?" The sheriff stood 20 yards away. He said nothing. Clayton marched toward him. "She's under investigation for burning this place." The sheriff looked at him. "Not your concern right now." Clayton stared. "What does that mean?" Clara walked through the gate. The whispers grew louder. She heard, "Pieces. Arsonist. Why is she here?" "That's her." Clara did not look at them. Her eyes stayed on King's Ransom. The stallion was still pacing. Then he stopped. His head lifted, his ears pointed forward. Clara took another step. King's Ransom smelled the air. A low sound came from his chest, not a scream. a nicker, recognition. The entire front row heard it. Clara stopped outside the pen. "Hey, boy." The stallion moved toward her. Not close, but closer than he had allowed anyone else in weeks. Clayton saw it. Something ugly twisted in his face. "Get her off my property." Nobody moved. I said, "Get her off." Then the loudspeaker cracked. A burst of static rolled across the arena. Everyone looked toward the announcer's booth. Eli stood behind the glass. He held a microphone. Clayton froze. Eli's breathing came through the speakers. Once, twice. Then, Clara Hayes did not start that fire. The entire property went silent. Clayton looked at the sheriff. The sheriff's expression did not change. Eli continued. "I know, because I was there." A murmur swept through the bleachers. Clayton began walking toward the booth. "Cut the power." Nobody moved. "I said cut it." Eli's voice shook. I saw Clayton Vance carry 2 fuel cans into the North Bay. Clayton stopped. I saw him pour accelerant along the wall behind the hay. People turned toward Clayton. I saw him light it. A woman in the front row covered her mouth. Eli gripped the microphone harder, and I watched him carry the second can across the yard and hide it in Clara Hayes' truck. The crowd erupted. Clayton shouted, "He's lying." Eli kept going. He caught me behind the feed shed. He told me if I talked, he'd throw my sick father off the land. He told me he'd tell the sheriff I helped him. Clayton pointed toward the booth. "That boy is a thief and a liar." Miller stepped into the arena. "No, Mr. Vance." Clayton turned. Miller held up a clear evidence bag. Inside was a black plastic object. A small camera. "This is the trail camera recovered yesterday from the tree line behind the equipment shed." Clayton's face changed. Eli looked down from the booth. Miller continued. "Your main security system was disconnected before the fire." He held up the bag. "This one wasn't." Clayton said nothing. Miller's voice remained calm. "It doesn't show the ignition point, but it does show you crossing the yard at 4:19 in the morning carrying a red fuel container." The crowd became completely still. "And at 4:23, it shows you standing beside Ms. Hayes' truck." Clayton took one step backward. The sheriff moved closer. Clayton looked around. He was calculating. Clara could see it. The exits, the truck, the distance. Miller spoke again. "We also have Mr. Mercer's sworn statement." Clayton's eyes went to Eli. "And chemical analysis from the burn origin." Miller paused. "And financial subpoenas for 3 loans secured using your father's signature after the date his physicians documented that he could no longer legally execute financial instruments." A sound escaped someone in the crowd. Clayton's confidence finally broke. "You had no right." Miller tilted his head. "No right to investigate an insurance claim?" Clayton turned toward his truck. 2 deputies moved into his path. He stopped. The sheriff spoke. "Clayton Vance, place your hands where I can see them." Clayton spun. "You're arresting me because of him?" He pointed toward Eli. The sheriff stepped closer. "No." Then he looked toward Miller. "We're detaining you because we have enough probable cause for arson, evidence tampering, witness intimidation, and attempted insurance fraud." Clayton's face became gray. "This is my property." The sheriff almost smiled. "That's something else your lawyers may want to discuss." Clayton tried to push past him. The deputies grabbed his arms. For a brief moment, he fought. Then the handcuffs closed. The same sound Clara remembered from the morning of the fire. metal clicking shut. Clayton looked toward her. His eyes were full of hatred. Clara stared back. She did not smile. That made it worse for him. "Tell them," Clayton shouted. "Tell them I gave you a job when nobody else would." Clara's expression hardened. "You hired the best trainer you could afford." The crowd went quiet. "You didn't give me anything." Clayton looked away. The deputies led him toward the patrol car. Clara could have watched. Part of her wanted to. Instead, she turned toward King's Ransom. The stallion was still trembling in the pen. Miller approached. "The veterinarian still needs to examine him." Clara looked at the horse. "You got a sedative?" "We do." "Put it away." The veterinarian frowned. "Ms. Hayes, this animal is dangerous. He's afraid. He nearly killed a man. So did the fire." Clara opened the gate. People began murmuring again. Miller said quietly, "You sure?" "No." She stepped inside anyway. King's Ransom raised his head. Clara stopped 10 feet away. She did not carry a whip, no chain, no sorting stick, not even a lead rope. She lowered her hands. "Hey, Ransom." The stallion breathed hard. "Been a rough month, huh?" His ears flicked. Clara took one step. The horse did not move. Another. His head lowered slightly. The arena was so quiet that people could hear the wind moving against the flags above the bleachers. Clara extended one scarred hand. King's Ransom stared at it, then walked forward. One step, then another, until his muzzle touched Clara's palm. Someone in the crowd began crying. Clara slid her hand slowly along the stallion's face. "There you are." King's Ransom exhaled, a long, shaking breath. Then he lowered his head against Clara's shoulder. She closed her eyes. For the first time since the fire, Clara felt something inside her release. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Not peace either. Something simpler. The certainty that the lie had finally become smaller than the truth. Behind her, the veterinarian whispered to Miller, "I can work with that." Clara opened her eyes. "No." The veterinarian blinked. "No?" "You can work with him." She stroked King's Ransom's neck. "Not with that." She pointed toward the discarded whip. The veterinarian nodded. "Fair enough." The news broke across North Texas that evening. Not the black trainer accused of burning Red River stables. This time, the headline was different. "Ranch heir, detained in arson and insurance fraud. Investigation." Clara's name was formally cleared 2 days later. The prosecutor issued a statement announcing there was no credible evidence linking her to the fire. Clara read it once, then folded the newspaper. Her attorney looked at her. "That's it." Clara stared at the page. "That's what?" "You're free." She looked at him. "I was free before." He did not know what to say. Clara continued. "They just finally stopped calling me guilty." The charges against Clayton grew. Investigators found more than the fire. Forged loan documents, hidden debts, false asset statements, threats against tenant farmers. Shell companies used to conceal equipment, and evidence that Clayton had negotiated the sale of several hundred acres without fully disclosing the debt attached to the property. Arthur Vance's attorneys intervened. The old man, recovering slowly from his stroke, claimed he had never authorized several of the transactions. Red River went into court-supervised restructuring for the first time in decades. The Vance name no longer decided everything by itself, but clearing Clara legally did not magically restore her life. Some clients called immediately, others did not. a few people arrived at her house with apologies. One was Tom, the man who had removed his horse the first morning she returned from jail. He stood at Clara's gate. "I was wrong." Clara leaned against the fence. "Yes." Tom looked uncomfortable. "I should have waited." "Yes. I'd like to bring Blue back." Clara studied him. "No." He looked surprised. "I'll pay your old rate plus 20%. "No." "Clara, you didn't take your horse because you had evidence." Tom lowered his eyes. "You took him because everyone else decided I was guilty and you didn't want to be the last person standing beside me." He said nothing. "I understand why." Tom looked hopeful. Clara continued, "But understanding isn't the same as forgetting." He nodded. "I'm sorry. I believe you." Tom left. Clara watched him go. She felt no victory, only clarity. Other apologies came. The feed store owner delivered 2 pallets of grain and refused payment. Clara sent them back. The next day he returned. This time he brought an invoice. 0 discount, no charity. Clara paid it. That was the beginning. Not forgiveness, but rebuilding. Eli came to see her a week after the auction. He stood outside the round pen. Clara was working a mare. When she finished, she approached. "How's your father?" "Better." "And the eviction?" "Frozen by the court." Clara nodded. Eli stared at the dirt. "I don't expect you to forgive me." Clara rested both arms on the fence. "Good." He looked up. "Because forgiveness isn't something you get to ask me for on your schedule." Eli nodded. "I know. But you told the truth." "Late." "Yes." He swallowed. Clara continued. "Late. Truth still matters." Eli's eyes filled. "I wish I'd done it that morning." "So do I." Silence. Then Clara opened the gate. "I've got 3 stalls that need cleaning." Eli blinked. "That mean I can work?" "It means I've got 3 stalls that need cleaning." A small smile appeared on his face. "Yes, ma'am." "Don't call me ma'am." "Yes, Clara." He walked toward the barn. Clara stopped him. "Eli." He turned. "You ever know somebody's innocent again?" His smile disappeared. "You don't wait." "I won't. I know." That mattered more than an apology. 3 months after the fire, Miller returned to Clara's property. This time, he was not carrying evidence bags. He carried a thick folder. Clara was replacing a fence board. "What did you bring?" "Paperwork." "I liked you better with ash on your shirt." Miller almost smiled. "You may like this." He placed the folder on the hood of her truck. The court-appointed trustees finished reviewing the Red River estate. Clara wiped her hands. "And it's worse than expected." "That doesn't sound like something I'll like." "Keep listening." He opened the folder. Arthur Vance still owns a portion of the property, but most of the operating company is insolvent. The trustees are dividing assets, settling legitimate debts, and voiding several fraudulent contracts. Clara folded her arms. "What does that have to do with me?" "The equine operation needs a manager." "No." Miller looked at her. "You didn't even hear the offer." "I don't want to work for another Vance." "You wouldn't." Clara paused. Miller slid a document toward her. A regional agricultural preservation trust is negotiating to take control of 312 acres, so the land isn't sold immediately to developers. Clara read the first page. "They want to preserve the horse operation." "Yes." "And they want you to run it." Clara laughed once. "No." "Again? I nearly went to prison because of that place." "Which is why they think you're the only person in the county people will trust to rebuild it." Clara looked toward her little barn. I have a place. You have 2 acres. It's mine. Yes. Miller nodded toward the paperwork. This could be 2. Clara looked at him. Eventually, he pointed to a paragraph. Long-term lease with an option to purchase portions of the operating property at a fixed agricultural valuation. Clara stared. You're serious? Very. She read in silence, then stopped. What about the Mercers? Miller's expression changed. That's interesting. How? During the title review, trustees found a document from 1958. Clara waited. Walter Mercer's grandfather entered a purchase agreement with Arthur Vance's father. Clara frowned. Purchase? 40 acres along the creek, paid through crop shares over 20 years. Then why does Walter think he's a tenant? Because the final deed was never recorded. Clara stared at him. Miller continued. The family kept paying what they believed was rent after the purchase should have been complete. For how long? More than 30 years. Clara's jaw tightened. Does Eli know? Not yet. Miller closed the folder. A judge will decide the final title issue, but the original contract, payment ledgers, and correspondence are strong. Clara looked toward the distant ridge. For the first time, the ending did not feel too neat. It felt like something buried was finally being uncovered. What happens to King's ransom? He's part of the equine assets. Which means, if you accept the lease, he stays. Clara looked at Miller. That was manipulative? Yes. You did that on purpose? Yes. She smiled despite herself. I'll read it. That's all I'm asking. Clara read every page, twice. 3 weeks later, she signed. Not because the town owed her something, not because she wanted revenge. Because she had spent her entire adult life believing horses damaged by fear could learn trust again. Maybe land could too. Maybe people could. The sign at the entrance came down on a cold October morning. Red River Stables. The letters had hung there for decades. Clara watched workers remove them. Eli stood beside her. What are you going to call it? Clara looked toward the pasture. King's Ransom stood beneath an oak tree. She thought for a moment. Ransom Ridge. Eli smiled. After him? Not exactly. Then why? Clara looked at the old sign lying in the grass. Because some things have to be paid before you can get your life back. Eli nodded slowly. Ransom Ridge Equine Center opened the following spring. It was smaller than Red River had been. Clara wanted it that way. No chandeliers in the sale barn, no polished brass signs, no luxury office. The new main barn had wide aisles, open sight lines, and stall doors designed so frightened horses could see other animals. Where the old tack room had burned, Clara built an open courtyard. In the center, she planted an oak tree. Eli asked why. So nothing ever feels trapped there again. The first horses to arrive were not million-dollar champions. They were 12 neglected animals seized by the county. Then 6 more. Then 3 retired performance horses. Clara trained young handlers. Eli became her assistant, not overnight. He earned it. He arrived first, left last. Told the truth even when the truth made him look bad. Especially then. Walter Mercer's case took longer. Months passed. Then one afternoon, a white county vehicle came down the creek road. Miller stepped out. He was carrying another folder. Eli groaned when he saw it. You ever show up without paperwork? No. Walter laughed from his porch. "Come on up." They gathered at the table. Miller opened the folder. The district judge issued a final ruling this morning. Eli stopped breathing. Walter stared at him. Miller slid a deed across the table. The 1958 purchase contract is enforceable. Walter's hand trembled. What does that mean? It means your father completed the purchase conditions decades ago. Walter looked at the document. The land? 40 acres, including the house and creek access. Walter did not touch the paper. Miller continued. The subsequent tenancy agreements are void because the Vance Management Company had no lawful basis to collect rent after the purchase was complete. Eli covered his mouth. Walter whispered, "It's ours." Miller nodded. "It's yours." Walter slowly placed his hand on the deed. His eyes filled. "My daddy died thinking he never owned a foot of this place." Nobody spoke. Walter looked toward the window for nearly a minute. The old man simply stared at the fields. Then he said quietly, "He did." Eli's voice broke. "Yeah." Walter nodded. "He just never knew it." Clara stood near the doorway. She looked at Miller. Truth took its time. Miller nodded. "It usually does." Walter turned toward Clara. "I owe you." "No." "Yes." "You don't." "If you hadn't..." Clara interrupted gently. "Eli told the truth." Walter looked at his son. Eli lowered his eyes. Clara continued. "That changed things." Walter placed a hand on Eli's shoulder. No more needed to be said. A year after the fire, Clara returned to the county courthouse, not for a criminal hearing, for Clayton Vance's sentencing. She almost did not go. Her attorney told her she did not have to. Miller said the same. Eli refused to tell her what to do. In the end, Clara went because she wanted to see the thing finished. Clayton looked different. No white Stetson, no tailored jacket, no polished boots. He wore county-issued clothes and sat beside two attorneys. He pleaded guilty to multiple counts tied to arson, attempted insurance fraud, evidence tampering, witness intimidation, and financial fraud. The judge spoke for a long time. Clara listened to almost none of it. She kept remembering the barn, the heat, the horses screaming, the cuffs closing over her burns. Then Clayton stood to speak. He apologized to his father, to employees, to creditors, to the court. He did not say Clara's name, not once. The judge noticed. "Mr. Vance." Clayton looked up. "There is someone else in this courtroom." Silence. Clayton turned. His eyes found Clara. For a moment, she saw the old arrogance, then something else. Shame, maybe, or simply defeat. "I'm sorry," he said. Clara did not answer. The judge waited. Clayton continued. "I ruined your name." Clara's expression remained still. "You tried." Clayton looked down. That was all she needed to say. The sentence was substantial. Years, restitution, financial penalties, asset forfeiture. When Clara left the courthouse, reporters waited on the steps. Microphones appeared. "Miss Hayes, do you forgive him?" Clara stopped. Cameras lifted. She thought about the question, then answered. "Forgiveness isn't the same thing as pretending something didn't happen." Another reporter asked, "Do you feel vindicated?" Clara looked toward the street. "I feel tired." A few people laughed nervously. Clara continued, "But I'm going home." That was the quote the papers printed. Not about vengeance, not about race, not about millions of dollars. "I'm going home." And Clara meant it. Ransom Ridge had become home. By the second year, The new oak in the courtyard had begun to cast a small circle of shade. King's ransom never returned to competition. Several buyers offered extraordinary money for him. Clara refused every offer. One afternoon, Eli asked why. He could be worth a fortune as a breeding stallion. Clara looked across the pasture. He already earned enough. How? He survived. Eli smiled. Fair? King's ransom spent his days in a broad pasture overlooking the creek. Sometimes Clara rode him. Mostly she did not. Their relationship no longer needed work to prove itself. On quiet mornings, he would see her crossing the field and walk toward her on his own. No halter, no rope, no command. Just choice. One autumn evening, Clara stood at the top rail of the pasture. The sky over North Texas had turned deep gold. Eli walked up carrying 2 halters. County truck gets here at 6 tomorrow. How many? 4. Condition? Bad. How bad? 2 neglected mares, 1 gelding that hasn't been handled in a year, and a colt they say bites. Clara nodded. Good, Eli laughed. Good? Means we've got work. He leaned on the fence beside her. For a while, they watched King's ransom graze near the creek. Eli had changed. His shoulders no longer folded inward. He looked people in the eye. He had started taking night classes in equine management. Walter's health was better. Not good. Better. And the Mercer farm had produced its first crop that belonged entirely to the Mercer family. No Vance percentage, no rent, no threat. Eli looked toward Clara. You ever think about leaving? Here? Yeah. No. Even after everything? Clara thought about it. The worst thing that ever happened to me happened right over that hill. Eli nodded. Clara continued. So did one of the best. What? She looked at him. You told the truth. Eli lowered his eyes. Eventually. Eventually counts. He smiled. They fell silent again. The wind moved through the tall grass. King's ransom lifted his head. The stallion began walking toward them, slowly, unhurried. He reached the fence and pushed his muzzle between the rails. Clara scratched beneath his jaw. You spoiled thing. The horse closed his eyes. Eli smiled. You think he remembers the fire? Clara looked at the scars hidden beneath the stallion's dark coat. Yeah. You think he'll ever forget? No. Eli looked surprised. Clara continued. Not everything has to be forgotten to stop owning you. The words hung in the evening air. Eli looked across the fields his family finally owned. Clara looked toward the new barn, built where the old one had burned. King's ransom breathed softly against her shoulder. For years, the people of Oak Ridge would tell the story differently. Some would say it was the story of a rich rancher who burned his own legacy for insurance money. Others would say it was about a frightened boy who finally found the courage to speak. Some would remember the investigation, the forged documents, the hidden land deed, the day Clayton Vance was led away in handcuffs in front of the same community that had once believed every word he said. But when people asked Clara what the story was really about, she never talked about Clayton. She talked about the horse, about the night King's ransom was trapped inside a burning stall, about how fear had made 1,200 pounds of muscle believe every direction meant death, about how you could not beat fear out of something. You could not threaten it away. You could not force trust. You had to stand still long enough for the frightened thing to discover that not every hand reaching toward it intended harm. And maybe Clara eventually understood. people were not so different. The town had believed a lie because fear was easier than uncertainty. Eli had stayed silent because fear was easier than courage. Clayton had set the fire because fear of losing his status had become stronger than his conscience. And Clara herself had nearly allowed anger to decide what the rest of her life would become. But fire had a strange way of revealing foundations. It burned away paint, names, old signs, pretenses. And when the smoke finally cleared, you discovered what had actually been holding everything up. On the anniversary of the fire, Clara woke before sunrise. She made coffee, pulled on her boots, then walked alone toward the south pasture. No ceremony had been planned, no reporters, no speeches. She preferred it that way. Morning fog hung over the creek. King's Ransom was standing near the oak trees. He saw her. The stallion began walking. Clara stopped at the fence. A year earlier, on that same morning, she had been sitting in the back of a patrol car while half the county decided she was guilty. Now the land beyond the fence belonged to a trust she was slowly buying into. The barn behind her carried her name on its operating papers. The horses inside were safe. Eli's family owned their home, and Clara's reputation. The thing Clayton had believed he could burn as easily as dry hay had survived. King's Ransom reached her. Clara opened the gate. The stallion stepped through. She did not put a halter on him. They walked together toward the ridge. At the top, Clara stopped. The sun was beginning to rise behind the trees, turning the fog gold. From there, she could see almost everything. Ransom Ridge, the Mercer Fields, the new barn, the courtyard oak, the blackened foundation stones that Clara had deliberately left beneath a section of the garden rather than tearing them out. Not as a monument to Clayton, as a reminder. Eli had once asked why she kept them. Clara told him, because rebuilding doesn't mean lying about what burned. Now she looked at those stones, then at the new timber above them. King's Ransom stood beside her. Clara rested a hand against his neck. You ready? The horse flicked an ear. Clara smiled. Me too. Behind them, the lights of the training barn came on. Eli had arrived early. A truck carrying another rescue horse was coming down County Road 412. A new day was starting, and Clara Hayes walked toward it without looking back. Not because the past no longer mattered, but because it no longer had the right to tell her where to go. The fire had taken a barn. Clayton Vance had tried to take her freedom. The town had nearly taken her name. Fear had almost taken Eli's courage. Greed had nearly taken the Mercer land. But in the end, the thing Clayton had never understood was the same thing Clara had spent her entire life teaching frightened horses. You can force something to move. You can make it obey for a moment. You can frighten it into silence. But fear is not loyalty. Power is not respect. And a lie, no matter how powerful the man telling it, can only survive as long as the truth is too afraid to stand up. That morning, the truth was standing in an open pasture beneath a North Texas sunrise, scarred, still healing, and completely free.